one of those joker cards that we didn't see coming and stuff. And so people only take action when they're scared for themselves, for their families, when they're not getting any results, when their lives are getting worse. And this is happening in California. And they're the hardest people to convince, but I think now they're starting to at least open their mind to that possibility. So,
Kiki?
Yes, can I just join this for a second? And I'd like to segue on what Daniel said.
here, you can take my place.
Thank you, Daniel. Very kind of you.
What kind of gentleman would have been?
Oh, okay. We're still filming.
We're
Come
still
on
filming.
The
in.
European gentleman that you are. I like to segue, and yeah, people are afraid, and I think Super Tuesday was a huge show of Democratic fear that they're going to lose this election, and that Sanders is too far left. I think that's what Super Tuesday said more than anything. I think they saw Sanders coming ahead. And believe me, I support him. I actually was a Warren fan, but look, certainly if he had gotten the nomination, I would have voted for him. And it's not, and the game isn't finished either. The game isn't finished. Him and Biden are pretty close in their delegate count right now, and we're not at the end of the game here. As they say, they haven't left the building. Yeah, so, who knows? We might see a huge show of force from Sanders people, and people saying, no, this is not what we want. But I think what it shows on Super Tuesday is the general paranoia and anxiety of having another 4 years of Trump. And I look at it as either way. If Trump wins, it's another disastrous 4 years, okay? If Biden wins, what is he getting? What's he going to get? He's going to get... Trump's going to lose because he didn't handle the COVID virus properly, and people died, an exorbitant amount. The federal resources weren't there, or if they weren't there, they weren't deployed properly. We now have an economy that's going into a death spiral, okay? And that is because we have a president who doesn't even know the basics of an economy. Excuse me. I have my bachelor's of science in nursing. I have a little bit of my master's in science. And certainly I'm not a Wharton graduate. That being said, I do know that when you have a Federal Reserve that is cowered by the president to keep the interest rates low, when we had a record stock market, even I knew that at this time, when you have a record stock market, when everything's going good, you should not be dropping the interest rates because you need to have an emergency reserve. At this point, he should have been slowly increasing them. Even if it was by 0.25, it should have been increased during these economic booms so that when we had an economic death spiral that we're having now, we had some wiggle room. We don't have any wiggle room now. Okay, there's no wiggle room, okay? There's no way to go. And so even if Biden gets this economy, even if Biden wins, he's going to get an economy with nowhere to go on interest rates. Nowhere. How are we going to stimulate this economy now? We have a president who completely destroyed so many levels of government, the State Department, trade is in a disaster, healthcare is in a disaster, education is in a disaster. If Biden picks this up from Trump, he's going to spend 4 years mopping up his mess. Probably, I can't see, if this economy continues, they say that this is going to be a temporary recession, that when everybody gets their little COVID virus and this whole thing passes, that we're going to just start up and everything's going to be fine again. And I don't see that happening. No. And so by the time we get elected, and even if Biden gets this, he's going to have a big mess on his hands. He's going to have a bad economy. He's going to have a government that's been destroyed by this sociopath narcissist who's in the mid stages of dementia, might I tell you, as a nurse. He's not even at the beginning. He's at the mid stage, and he's medicated. We all saw that disastrous speech he had this week.
Biden or Trump is in the mid stages of dementia.
I would say. Trump is worse. 2024, are we going to get another Biden? Probably not, because he won't be able to clean the mess up. And but then we'll have Ivanka.
Yeah, it was great.
We'll have Ivanka, and then where are we going to go?
So we have two sides.
So I mean, even if we get, I mean, yeah, we would be love to, even if we get Bernie or Biden, regardless, they're gonna be handed, excuse my language, but a shit sandwich.
Well, and I know
then their ability to fix it will be very limited because we don't have much in reserve.
I know there's a lot of Bernie love here, and I respect you guys. But if Bernie Sanders did become president of the United States, a large portion of this country, secessionist movements would begin. Like that.
Immediately.
Yeah. Like Nigel Ferguson, who's a famous sort of
That's my piece. Thank you.
center right. Thank you so
Hey,
much for that.
where are you going?
Yeah, why
Where
did
are
I
you
stay?
going?
Lloyd's.
He's a center right intellectual guy. He said that the Antifa response to Trump was mild compared to what would have happened on the American right if Trump had not won the presidency in 2016. No one has commented on this.
Good point.
But the populist fervor that would have arisen because they truly believed he would have been robbed. And we all know Sanders literally was robbed by Hillary. That's well documented. But the populist right, like Sanders is not going to fix America. The president can't fix America.
Right.
And the populist Tea Party, it would be Tea Party Part 2 in the House and the Senate. Down ballot. That's the main reason they're going for Biden. It's because down ballot, they're worried they're going to get crushed.
Right. Not to mention the way the Supreme Court is balanced now too. Laws coming out will face any law coming out from a Bernie administration is going to face immediate legal challenge.
Yes.
In any courtroom.
Well,
yes.
Not to mention a Senate.
No.
Not to mention a Senate, which 35 red states control.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's say that Bernie Sanders beat the odds, and not mine,
Right
credited to this gentleman
Right
here.
there. Hannah.
Even if Bernie Sanders beat the odds and it was President Sanders, it wouldn't be like down south with President AMLO, where he's got a honeymoon with both houses of the Mexican Congress in the hands of his party, Morena. It wouldn't be a honeymoon. It would be a nightmare for Sanders. He couldn't get diddly passed. Well, not with 35 Senate seats in the hands of hostile governments.
That's a
Okay,
good point.
so even if you had President Sanders,
Yeah.
it would be like they say, "Ike, what?" And nothing. Okay, he'd be stalled at every turn.
I'm being dramatic.
Let me.
And
back up.
I think Sanders actually knows all this, and I think that's like last time he stayed in the race through the whole thing, right? I mean, he was there way after he knew he wasn't going to get the nomination, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's because he's playing a longer ideological game across the whole country. For him, this really is. I think if California doesn't secede and the union does survive for the next 20 years, in about 16 years, you're going to have essentially Bernie's ideology in the White House by someone else.
We don't have 16 years.
well,
Nobody does.
there are three elements here. Three elements here that are coming in that come to the fore when you think about it. First off, for Bernie, it's TikTok. If Bernie doesn't get the nomination this time around, 4 years, 8 years down the road, pretty much done.
Mhm.
Pretty much done.
Yeah.
There really isn't somebody with the national profile that can pick up that mantle right now. So for the Bernicrats, that's a tough pill.
Yeah.
That's a tough pill. The second thing that's going on here is that the Bernie people, and it's like conservatives have seen this, Democrats have seen this, liberals have seen this of all ilks, have suddenly come to the conclusion that not only due to the Electoral College, but now, convention-wise, you find out what it means to be a California voter. You're going to get your vote negated no matter what you do. Your vote will be dismissed. Your vote will be pushed to the side. You'll get, oh, and by the way, California, 6 million people voted for Hillary, but no one cares. So let's go back to, like I said, let's go back to South Carolina.
Right.
And this is what happens. This is what it's like. Californians have been watching this for a long time, and that's all up and down the spectrum, or back and forth the spectrum, or left, right, center.
Yes.
Like close. I will not be ignored.
Well, if you're ignored for the third time or fourth time in a single decade, that starts to wear thin. Now you add on top of that, Bernie people on the left, Californians in general, have watched a federal government that is this incredible mixture of hostility and incompetence. I mean, a matter of talking to some of our friends, it's like Paradise, California is still waiting for the check. They still haven't done anything to help the people of Paradise. But we had a Category 1 storm off the off the Carolina coast, and those people got paid the day after.
Well, because we don't rake our forest well.
We don't rake
That's the problem.
Let me.
It's our problem. It's our fault.
If that's what we're watching,
Right?
It's our fault.
if we're watching a federal government that is incompetent in their handling of the economy, this virus, trade, and it's a long list. It's becoming a long list, and they ignore our vote. It's like they're doing things we don't like, and they're ignoring our vote.
So let me,
Not just ignoring.
I need
That's
to
a
talk
charitable interpretation, because I got some predictions of my own. The first one of which is the common prediction that Bernie Sanders would carry California. Okay, I'm on board with that. The reaction to that I'm predicting, well, of course, one thing is that the DNC is getting really hostile to Bernie Sanders, and the other shoe, if you would be that the DNC is going to start to run hostile against California. Okay, being the left outlier, the left coast, the guys who dare fly this way. Okay, so
that's true.
when you look at how they operated post 2016 to explain away what they had just done, what card did they pull? What card did they play to generate fear, to generate contempt? The Russia card. We didn't do it, the Russians. According to them, we're not even here. We're in some, troll factory deep in Moscow someplace. We are transmitting live from Moscow State University. Here's what they want you to believe. Okay? So, yes, you're really going to hear it when Trump comes back. Russia, Russia, Russia. Okay, we were swayed by Russian bots in their thousands, in their, make up any figure if you would. Because, they're not real good at truth. These Americans aren't. I mean, consider that Trump just declared himself to be free of the coronavirus. He would say that if it was true. He would also say it if it was not.
Yeah.
That was totally predictable, whether he has it or not. And that's the way it's going to go, I think, is they're going to get really hostile towards California as they are toward Bernie Sanders, and they're going to be screaming Russia at us like crazy.
Let me jump in for 2 minutes. I'll kick it right back to you guys. So, number one, to back up, somebody said, hey, doesn't matter who gets elected, if you don't have control of the Senate, nothing that Warren wants,
Exactly what I
nothing that
wanted to
Bernie
say.
wants is
Yes.
going to happen.
Yes.
Well, turns out that in GQ magazine, also ran on Yahoo, this March 9th, last week, the deputy chief of staff to the top Senate Democrat, Harry Reid, Harry Reid, top Senate Democrat, his chief of staff, Adam Gentleson, wrote an article last week that said, doesn't matter who you elect. If you don't own the Senate, you get nothing. So we have the chief of staff to one of the most powerful U.S. senators in the Democratic side saying, Warren and Sanders are going to do nothing unless you have the Senate. End of story. Just wanted to back that up with what everybody was saying. I do want to point out something that we were also talking about, the coronavirus, and Californians are seeing how it's not being handled well, and they think maybe we could do better on our own. So Dr. Victoria Dooley is a female medical doctor, eloquent, and a minority, and she just said, sign me up for CalExit this week.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Priyanka Wali is also another articulate female minority educated medical doctor who said, let's secede. This week. Interesting pattern that we have articulate, intelligent minority female doctors in the middle of the coronavirus
Spread
saying,
the word.
let's leave.
Spread the word.
It's almost like they're saying we could do better on our own.
Yeah. Let's do it.
And to back up what Matt had said about, and I think some of the others have said that California's going to go to Bernie. American Democrats going to be pissed off, and then they're going to start turning on California. Well, look at here. After Matt made that prediction, because you told me that weeks ago, Vox News, in an article called Bernie Sanders Wins California, at the very bottom, he did all this, and then they go, the state's more progressive lean too had something that likely favored Sanders. According to Gallup, California voters overall are on the more liberal end of the spectrum compared to the rest of America. So that's a liberal magazine explaining how these crazy Californians, they're not like the rest of Americans. That's why they voted for Bernie, exactly as you predicted. Back to you guys.
I just want to second Matt's thing that you've already said, because I was saying you have to realize that America is broken before you're thinking serious about independent California. But even if you didn't think it was broken, you could see that the Senate, like Matt said, is going to be controlled by Republicans, and that anybody that comes in will be a lame duck in that position. So even if you don't believe in that, drastic, that America's broken, that it can come back, how is it going to come back? How is it going to come back when the Senate controls and the 1% control the Senate? How is it going to come back? Because even the most charismatic social democrat or whatever would not be able to do anything with a Senate that's majority Republican. Obama, I mean, a lot of people will disagree. They love Obama and stuff, but Obama didn't do much.
That's what I've told liberals, that they love
Obama
and
didn't
I
do
go,
much.
Tell me the bills that got passed. They
Yeah.
go, well, healthcare. And I go, tell me about... And I go, but I say, okay, other than that one, what else got passed? And then they pause, and I go, if I told you that experts said that the 8 years of Obama was the least productive period in Congress in American history, what would you say? And they immediately go, well, that's all the racist Tea Party people. And they dismiss it. No. And I go, fine, but didn't you just admit in 8 years the smartest man couldn't get shit done?
Yeah.
And you think it's going to be different next time? Real quick quote.
No.
If Republicans retain control of the Senate, no Democratic president will get much done, period.
There you go.
Assistant to Harry Reid. Turn it back to you.
No, that's the point, and it's the end.
Oh,
Sorry, take this away from me. That's the end point of all of this. It's actually one of the cruxes of California independence. As long as we're part of them,
yeah.
this stuff matters.
Yeah.
As long as we're part of them.
Right.
It's like we have to face these fights. We have to face fights that don't make sense. Because as long as we're part of them, these people, of the USA, these people have sway.
There you go. Now the camera's
Yes.
These people have sway. These people, people that we can't elect, can't touch, can't reach, and will ignore whatever vote you're going to put forward. Left, right, center, Democrats, Republicans, socialists, whatever ism you want to stick on it. As long as that stays in place, as long as Washington is 2,500 miles away, and they don't care whether we fall into the ocean or not, as long as we keep sending them money.
Right.
Nothing will happen here. Nothing positive will happen here. The answer to the coronavirus thing, it's not necessarily maybe the California could have done it better, but I will say this from a California exit standpoint, we couldn't have done worse. We couldn't have done. I mean, we couldn't have done it worse. They sat on it. They sat on it for a month. It's talking about how this doesn't matter. It's like maybe it doesn't. But you could have reassembled the teams of the CDC. You could have got something going. Maybe you might want to look at it. Maybe you might want to at least set up a panel to look at it. It was like California couldn't have done worse because the worst that California could have done is they could have done absolutely nothing for a month, just like was done.
Right.
Does that not make sense?
Yeah, and which leads to the point that if we had done it, we would have held our representatives in California responsible for that. We couldn't have taken a Trump answer like, "Oh no, it's going to go away in April" and stuff. We would have gone, "Are you mad?" If Adam Schiff got up there and says, "Oh, don't worry, guys, we're good," and stuff, Californians would never put up with that. Never.
It's how it goes, and it's the systematic problem. Let's say there's a lightning bolt from heaven. Bernie Sanders becomes president of the United States. I don't know. Could happen. Maybe. Okay. But those people who are going to fight tooth and claw against him are still there.
Yeah.
They're never going away.
And they're powerful.
They're powerful. They're powerful. We can't reach them, and they're never going away. They're Mitch McConnell from Kentucky and all these people who are going to align against to make sure that nothing happens.
Right.
You're facing an election. Californians are facing an election. We just got our votes ignored in the DNC. We just got our votes ignored on this. For an election that we can't influence. We're not going to be able to influence it. But these people, in their incompetence, are going to stay in power. And they're going to be there no matter what we do until we are it's like they're going to be there. Since they're always going to be there, the truth of the California exit move, the truth of California independence is that if they're going to always be there, we should not be there. The only remedy that makes any sense in the long run is if they're always going to be there, we should not be there.
Yeah.
We should be where we should be here taking care of business.
And you got and I'll add that this isn't just after Kiki mentioned it was Trump messed up everything. This is 30 years of entrenchment. It's like the World War I where they were in the trenches, entrenched there, and they're way entrenched with roots, and they're not going away. You're not getting them out of that trench, not easily, unless we're talking revolutions or drastic things like that. Not talking about revolution, but saying since we can't get them out, then we need to get out. That's the only logical.
I'm sorry, I just got to interrupt.
Thing.
Brand new news out right now. Someone in the audience pointed this out. The federal government needs to get its shit together now. Illinois' governor just said because he thinks the feds do so horrible. He didn't say Trump. He said the federal government is doing so god-awful, they need to get their shit together now. Just back to you.
Actually,
I'm good if it doesn't.
No, actually brings up one further question. So when they're done doing such a bang up job on the coronavirus, you think they're going to take on climate change?
Oh God, yeah.
Blub blub blub.
You think these?
Well, they're handling about like they're handling climate change right now. That's doing nothing and ignoring and saying it doesn't exist almost. I mean, Trump is basically saying it's no big deal, just like he said about the climate change. So it's basically using the same argument on both. It's crazy.
No, it's like it's one of those. but we're going to be good conservatives here, and it's like, oh my God, the coronavirus is going to crush the economy, so let's throw money at it.
That was easy.
Yeah, and it also went. It also went away. Like butter in a hot pan. It just fizzled for a second, vanished.
You know that when
Vanished into
the
somebody-
Chinese used to do that to save their stocks, it was condemned as red chipping. And of course, the thing literally that the New York Stock Exchange showed after the massive $1 trillion bailout is this. The thing about red chips is that 20 minutes after, you're hungry again.
Yeah, right.
That's like I said. That's kind of the point here. And the Bernie people. Like I said, basically they've been running this campaign now for 4 years.
Yes.
This has been a 4-year slog for them. And it started during the Hillary campaign, and it's like you don't have to love them or agree with them or what have you. It's like a lot of people in there saying, "Oh, we'll run Bernie for president of California." I'm like, I'd prefer a California.
Yeah, that was my response to that
I
tweet
would-
too. Yeah.
I would. It's like Bernie. It's like I'm sure Bernie's a nice guy,
Yeah.
and it's like I like a lot of what he says, but I prefer California.
Yeah,
I prefer
for sure.
I prefer somebody who understands the country,
Right.
who knows the people,
Yes.
who knows what we need. I don't want a guy in there who haven't heard say the words drought, wildfires,
Right.
homeless problem.
Right.
Who's not mentioning the problems that are facing California. I prefer somebody who
Yep.
who has our interests at heart. You ask Bernie, if you were to ask Bernie about homelessness, he'll. If you ask, oh boy, I can throw it over them. If you ask Bernie about homelessness, he'll say it's income inequality, and he'll outline his plan. That's like,
Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
that means we're not necessarily thinking on a California national standpoint.
Right.
Are we thinking on a California national standpoint? I mean,
I'm thinking from the standpoint of somebody who's in a lifeboat called California. And that ship that we're still attached to is shipping water over to Gunnels.
Yeah. Well, Hal's always said that we want to detach from the sinking ships.
Yes. Yes.
well, it's a discussion point for it's a discussion point for another panel. That's the discussion point that goes. If we've been a donor state for all but one of the last 30 years, and they've literally gone out and borrowed, $24 trillion, I have to say, if we haven't seen any of that money, why would we owe any of that money?
That's a good question.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it is.
And these are the kinds of the union is going to eventually go away. When who knows? But
Yeah.
this is why we need to be having these discussions so we can come up with plans for what's going to happen when it goes away.
Right.
And issues like that, like how to deal out the debt. Well, if we've been paying it and not getting anything back, then what do we owe? Like that's an excellent point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff we have to
That's
be thinking about.
That's 101 accounting.
I'm
Okay.
about to. Shankar, you just sat down.
Hal, what's up, guys?
How you doing?
Hello.
Sorry I'm late, everybody. So I'm trying to listen in and see what you guys are touching base on. It sounds like a little bit of everything.
Yeah, but
we were just
typically
listening. We were just listening to Bernie.
the Bernie,
Bernie thing?
yeah,
Bernie
that's the
and
most
Bernie.
the Bernie and how they're gonna
Right.
how
How
independent how ties to independent California,
So-
and they might migrate to
Yeah, Sanderneses are coming to
So-
us like droves.
Before I get into Bernie, though, the debt, that's one that they loom over our head constantly.
Yeah.
California's got to pay its fair share of our national debt. And you're right, we have been paying it. What's going to end up happening, I think, is that there's going to be another study. They're going to crunch the numbers on that and see how much we actually owe, which I think is